watching All 24 News, World News with me, Maritime, to the headlines. On the 12th day of the U.S. Zionist war in Iran, Tehran targets a Zionist intelligence center and a naval base in Haifa and vows to carry out successive strikes on the enemy, while U.S. President Donald Trump promises that the war against Iran will end soon. Next, the Iranian army says that Israeli, U.S. and allied ships are legitimate targets in the Hormuz Strait. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard target Liberian flagged vessel and Thai tanker in Hormuz Strait. The International Energy Agency undertakes largest strategic oil withdrawal in its history. Also, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard announces targeting U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. Saudi defense declares intercepting and destroying 5 drones east of Al-Khaj Governorate, and Oman shoots down drone and declares force majeure on gas supplies to Bangladesh. 4 Lebanese killed in Zionist raid targeting a flat in Beirut. 2 Zionist raids on Beirut's southern suburbs after evacuation warning, and Hezbollah fires 100 rockets towards northern Israel. Hello and welcome back to the details of your nightly news. And first, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps announced on Wednesday the execution of the 39th wave of Operation True Promise 4 against what it called American targets in the region. The statement issued by the IRGC's Public Relations Office said that the 39th wave of the operation was carried out in the name of the victims and in commemoration of the martyrs, noting that it involved the destruction of American military bases in the Gulf region. The Iranian army announced that it targeted an Israeli military intelligence center in Haifa naval base in occupied Palestine and a radar system. In a statement broadcast on state television Wednesday, the Iranian army said it had targeted the Israeli military intelligence division known as Amman Unit 8200, the Green Pine radar, and the submarine headquarters building at the Haifa naval base, confirming that the attacks were ongoing. And Iran has vowed to retaliate against recent U.S.-Israeli strikes targeting residential areas, according to the Iranian military's news website, Deva Press, which quoted the country's armed forces spokesman who called on regional and Muslim countries to identify the hiding places of Americans and Zionists to ensure the accuracy and effectiveness of Iranian strikes while minimizing civilian casualties, whom he described as being used as human shields. The Iranian forces vowed to strike Israeli and U.S. economic targets after an attack on a bank in Tehran. In a statement broadcast on state TV, Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters said targeting a civilian economic facility is illegitimate and unprecedented in war, warning that Iran may respond by hitting U.S. and Israeli economic centers and banks in the region. The statement also urged people to stay at least 1 kilometer away from banks, warning the Iranian response would be decisive and painful. Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya military headquarters said the policy of reciprocal responses has ended and that Tehran has entered a new phase of confrontation based on continuous strikes. Spokesperson Ibrahim Zulfahari said in a television statement on Wednesday that Iran had repeatedly warned Washington and Tel Aviv against igniting war, adding that Iran will determine how it ends according to its own calculations and military capabilities.
The policy of reciprocal strikes has ended. We have moved into a new phase of confrontation based on carrying out continuous strikes from now on, The strategy of hiding behind neighboring countries in West Asia has ended, and attempts to conceal forces within civilian facilities or near infrastructure will not protect them from being targeted. Bases linked to the United States or Israel in the region will be targeted one after another. These sites will pay the price of the war that Washington and Tel Aviv have ignited in the region.
US President Donald Trump said the war with Iran will end soon, claiming there is almost nothing left to target in Tehran. In a phone interview with Axios on Wednesday, Trump repeated that there are no significant targets remaining in Iran and that the war will end soon. The United States Central Command said it continues to carry out strong daily strikes on Iran's ballistic missiles and drones, adding that U.S. combat power is increasing while Iran's military capability is declining. Commander Brad Cooper said Wednesday that Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks have decreased since the first 24 hours of the campaign. He added that the United States Armed Forces has struck more than 5,500 targets in Iran with various precision weapons, including 60 ships, and confirmed the destruction of the last warship of the Soleimani class, leaving the entire Iranian fleet out of the fight, as he put it.
Iranian ballistic missile and drones, including more than 60. We're striking hard at Iranian ballistic missile and drones. To date, we have struck more than 5,500 targets inside Iran, including more than 60 ships, using a variety of precision weapon systems. Just yesterday, we had strike waves nearly every hour from different locations and directions going into Iran. We also took out the last of 4 Soleimani-class warships. That's an entire class of Iranian ships now out of the fight. Since the first 24 hours of this campaign, Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks have dropped drastically.
The Wall Street Journal reported, citing U.S. officials, that the United States informed Israel of its dissatisfaction with the recent attacks on Iran's energy facilities. The sources added Wednesday that Washington warned Israel not to repeat strikes on Iranian energy sites without its approval. UN officials warned Tuesday that U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Iran's oil depots have caused toxic black rain, polluted rainfall, spreading across the Middle East, posing public health risks due to respiratory complications. At a press conference in Geneva, Ravina Shamadasani, spokesperson for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, expressed concern about the environmental and health impacts of the airstrikes. She warned the consequences raise serious questions about whether Israel and the United States respected the principles of proportionality and precautions under international humanitarian law.
We are concerned about the impact of these attacks on civilians' right to health, as well as on the environment.
The black rain and the acidic rain coming with it is indeed a danger for the population, respiratory mainly, and it could be acidic, depending, of course, what context you have. So we're in touch with the hospitals and with the authorities, and the Iranian authorities have issued an alert advising people to stay indoors, even in light of the attacks on oil warehouses.
Masoud Pezeshkian, talking to leaders of Russia and Pakistan, said he reaffirmed Iran's commitment to peace in the region. The only way to end this war, ignited by the Zionist regime and the U.S., is recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, payment of reparations, and firm international guarantees against future aggression.
Talking to leaders of Russia and Pakistan, I reaffirmed Iran's commitment to peace in the region. The only way to end this war, ignited by the Zionist regime and the United States, is recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, payment of reparations, and firm international guarantees against future aggression.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said his country's missiles caused massive destruction deep inside Israel. In a post on X on Wednesday, Araghchi said claims that Iran had been planning to attack the United States or U.S. forces, whether as preventive or preemptive move, are clear and blatant lies, adding that such allegations are meant to justify what he described as a major mistake. Iran said U.S.-Israeli attacks have killed more than 1,300 civilians, including women and children, and destroyed thousands of inhabited residential areas since the start of the offensive. Speaking at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani accused the United States and its ally Israel of committing war crimes by deliberately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, urging the United Nations Security Council to take immediate action to stop the attacks.
The United States and Israeli regime continue their massive attack against Iran and the Iranian people without pause, day and night. They are deliberately and discriminately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure across my country. They show no respect for international law and no restraint in committing these crimes. Densely populated residential area and critical civilian infrastructure are deliberately targeted. So far, these horrific crimes have resulted in the martyrdom of more than 1,300 civilians. They have also destroyed 9,669 civilian sites.
The Islamic Republic of Iran Army said ships linked to the United States, Israel, or their allies are legitimate targets in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. In a statement Wednesday, Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, Iran's Central Military Operations Command, said any ship carrying oil owned by the U.S., Israel, or their allies will be considered a legitimate target, adding that Iranian armed forces will not allow a single liter of oil to pass through the strait. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it targeted a Thai cargo ship and a Liberia-flagged vessel it claimed belongs to Israel, after they ignored warnings to stop in the Strait of Hormuz. In a statement reported by Iranian Students News Agency, the IRGC said the ship Express Rom and the container vessel Mayuri Nari were hit by Iranian projectiles and forced to stop after disregarding warnings from IRGC naval forces. IRGC Navy Commander Alireza Tansiri also said on X that any vessel intended to pass through the strait must obtain prior permission from Iran. The International Energy Agency announced approval of its largest ever release from emergency oil reserves due to a rise in energy prices caused by the U.S.-Israel war on Iran. On Wednesday, the agency said all 32 member countries unanimously agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves to address supply disruptions resulting from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And Iran expects oil prices to reach $200 per barrel, saying the Strait of Hormuz closure results from policies imposed by the United States and Israel. IRGC spokesperson Ibrahim Zulfikari added Wednesday that oil prices are tied to regional security, which he said was destabilized by the U.S. and Israel.
The closure of the Strait of Hormuz will be a consequence of the conditions imposed by the United States and Israel on countries around the world. However, we reiterate that we will never allow a single liter of oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz for the benefit of the United States, Israel, or their partners. Any ship or oil shipment belonging to the United States, the Israeli entity, or their hostile partners will be considered a legitimate target.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced strikes on U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain amid the war with the United States and Israel. In a statement on Sepah News Wednesday, the IRGC said Iranian missiles and drones hit critical infrastructure at the U.S. base in Port Salman, Bahrain, the main hub of the U.S. Fifth Fleet. The statement added that severe damage struck the Patriot camp in Kuwait, affecting equipment hangars, living quarters, and U.S. troop assembly areas at Mohammed Al Ahmed Naval Base and Ali Salim Naval Base, as well as Camp Buhrain. The Saudi Ministry of Defense announced the interception and destruction of a ballistic missile launched toward the eastern province. Its official spokesperson said early Wednesday on X that 5 drones were intercepted over Al-Kharj. A ballistic missile was destroyed en route to the eastern province. 6 previously launched missiles toward Prince Sultan Air Base were destroyed, and 2 drones were intercepted over Hafr al-Batin. An Omani security source reported the downing of 1 drone and another falling into the sea north of Duqm with no human or material casualties. Oman news agency on Wednesday condemned the ongoing targeting of the country and said Muscat will take all measures to ensure national security and the safety of residents. Separately, Omani company OQ declared force majeure on liquefied natural gas supplies to Petro Bangla in Bangladesh. And as the military confrontation between Iran on one side and the United States and the Israeli occupation on the other enters its second week, it has become clear that the war has not unfolded according to plan, having expanded to include several countries in the region amid expectations of its protracted nature. Usamaya details you more.
From a swift military operation resolved by airstrikes, as the Zionist occupation authorities imagined, to a war with no predictable end date, even with a multitude of official statements and declarations. With the first American-Israeli attack that killed Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Tehran seemed to absorb the shock, responding directly to its leader with missiles and drones targeting the heart of the Zionist entity and American military bases in the region.
The result of the aggression by Israelis and Americans, which has made the whole region insecure, unstable, and the consequences are huge for not only us, but for the whole region and now for the international community.
The Iranian war enters its second week amid expectations that it will turn into an open-ended war of attrition for all parties after its scope expanded. A war in which Tehran is betting on its resilience after announcing the use of an advanced missile arsenal that it claims carries warheads weighing 2 tons, and even vowing that it will be the one to decide when this war ends.
This is the second time this has happened, and in the middle of negotiations, literally. The negotiations are being bombed. Therefore, any mediation that takes place will naturally be under conditions where first there is not only a ceasefire, but a complete agreement, meaning reaching a point where we know it will not happen again.
Iran has so far categorically refused to engage in mediation efforts to establish a ceasefire in the current confrontation, asserting that it will only accept tangible guarantees. Iran has taken a stance described by observers as decisive, declaring that it will not enter into any negotiations with the United States, even if it means prolonging the war.
After 3 rounds of negotiation, and after the American team in the negotiation, said itself that we made a big progress, still they decided to attack us. So I don't think, talking with Americans anymore would be, on our agenda anymore.
Not a swift victory as the Zionist entity hoped, but a war whose end cannot be predicted. The realities on the ground reveal that this war is entirely different from the 12-day war, its most prominent feature being the refusal to surrender, even if it requires enduring the consequences of its prolongation.
And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called Wednesday for an end to the war in the Middle East before the entire region ignites, warning of its rising costs to the global economy. Speaking to lawmakers of his Justice and Development Party, Erdogan stressed the need to stop the war before it spreads further, warning of more loss of life, property damage, and higher global economic costs.
While there was an opportunity to resolve the issues through negotiations, misjudgments, poor decision-making and of course provocations by bloodthirsty network have once again plunged our region into the smell of blood and gunpowder. This war must be stopped before it escalates and engulfs the entire region. If given the chance, diplomacy can achieve peace. We continue our efforts patiently to return to the negotiating table and revitalize diplomacy.
And China said it does not approve of attacks on Gulf countries. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhen Shuang told a regular press conference Wednesday that China condemns all indiscriminate attacks on civilians and non-military targets, stressed the need to respect the sovereignty of all Middle Eastern countries, and called for a return to dialogue, negotiation, and peace.
China does not go along with attacks against countries in the Gulf region and condemns non-discriminatory attacks against civilians or non-military targets. The pressing priority now is to stop military operations at once and prevent the conflict from spreading. The way out of the conflict is to return to dialogue and negotiation as soon as possible and strive for restoration of peace. The fundamental solution is to jointly return to the right track of abiding by international law and basic norms of international relations.
And Russia said it is in continuous contact with the Iran leadership and is ready to help restore peace and stability in the region. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters Wednesday that Russia is in constant communication with Iran and is prepared to do everything possible to bring back peace and stability to the Middle East.
As President Putin said, Russia is always ready to make any contribution it can to restoring peace and stability in the region. That's the first thing. None of these topics were discussed during yesterday's phone call. And of course, it's difficult to assess the reliability of this information these days. Is it factual information or just a leak? There should always be an element of doubt.
And Spain permanently recalled its ambassador to Israel Tuesday amid escalating diplomatic tensions over Madrid's opposition to U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. Spain's official statement said the embassy will be run by a chargé d'affaires for the time being. This marks the latest escalation in bilateral relations, which have deteriorated since the Israeli offensive on Gaza Strip in October 2023. Several Lebanese civilians were killed in the initial toll of an attack targeting an apartment in the Aisha Bakr area of Beirut. Lebanese sources said Wednesday that the Israeli occupation struck a residential building, killing 4 civilians and wounding many others in Aisha Bakr, the capital's area. 2 Israeli airstrikes hit the southern suburbs of Beirut Wednesday morning, the national news agency reported, following Israeli warnings to evacuate 2 neighborhoods ahead of the strikes, after a previous raid targeted the city center. The agency said the strikes first hit Harat Hrik, followed by a second attack minutes later, with video footage showing black smoke rising from both locations in southern Beirut. Hezbollah announced the new military operations against Israel called Asf al-Ma'kul. According to Hebrew media, Hezbollah fired on Wednesday 100 rockets at once from Lebanon towards settlements in northern Palestinian territories. Beirut tonight. Shells fall, streets empty, nearly 700,000 flee, among them 73-year-old Maryam Hassan Rida, sleeps in a school hallway, unsure if her home still stands. The UN warns Lebanon faces a growing humanitarian crisis. More with Nabil Khazini in this story.
This is Lebanon tonight. Shells tear through Ba'bada city. People run. Fear is everywhere. This is because the occupation has launched airstrikes and evacuation orders. The result, nearly 7,000 have fled their homes. Lebanon is now a front line in the widening Middle East conflict, and aid agencies warn of a growing crisis. Among the displaced is Maryam Hassan Rida. She is 73. She fled Hanawiya last week. In the middle of the night, alone, she grabbed her neighbors, left everything behind. She stayed one night in a hotel, couldn't pay for more, slept on the streets for days until she found a shelter. Her home had been damaged in the 2024. She doesn't know if it still stands. Now she sleeps on a mattress in a school hallway, no pillow, no family, just the hum of other displaced people waiting and unsure.
I'm afraid. Yes, I want to go back to my hometown. I'm afraid. I'm scared for myself. There are strikes here and there are strikes there. I'm confused about where to go. You tell me. Humiliation and hunger.
The United Nations warns the crisis could get worse. UN aid chief told the United Nations that Lebanon faces a moment of grave peril. Violence is rising, humanitarian needs are skyrocketing. Aid agencies race to provide food, shelter and medical care. But the shelling continues, evacuations also continue, and safety remains fragile.
This is a moment of grave peril for Lebanon and for the region. For all of us. Too many warning lights are flashing. Actions have consequences. Lebanon's particular place on the map and in history means that tremors in geopolitics ricochet through it like earthquakes. So, when the world turns away from international law and human solidarity, Lebanon shakes.
For Maryam and hundreds of thousands like her, the streets are home for now. Fear is constant, hope is fragile, and everyone here brace for what comes next.
The end of our program. Thank you for your kind attention.